So welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Cristina Bandeira, and I'm the chair of IPEN, the International Parliament Engagement Network that co-hosts with the IPU, the Public Engagement Hub. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to this seminar on processing citizen engagement inputs for parliamentary business with a focus on the Brazilian Congress. One of my favorite parliaments, I have to add to there. I've got lots of favorites though. I've got the big favorites, the small favorites, lots of different sizes and shapes. But Brazilian Congress definitely a favorite one, and an interesting one to look at this issue of processing citizen engagement inputs. So this seminar is part of a series of seminars we've been organising with the IPU that explores issues of public engagement and parliament following the publication of the Global Parliamentary Report on Public Engagement, March 2022. So before I introduce the topic of today and our speakers, just a few housekeeping rules. The seminar has translation into French and Spanish, and from French and Spanish, if anyone wants to ask questions in those languages, through the interpretation button at the bottom. So on your screen, you should be able to see interpretation there. And if you go into there and select which language you'd like to hear the seminar, that'll be great. So the speakers will speak in English, but obviously we could have questions in French or in Spanish. Throughout the seminar, unless you're asked to speak, please keep your mic muted. But please do keep your cameras on if your broadband, if your connection allows you to do so. It's really nice to see faces. Like for instance, I've just seen Ken Coghill in front of me, coming from Australia. What time is it in Australia, Ken? Or are you in Europe at the moment? You're on mute, but. I'll assume you're in Australia and it's really early because it looks dark in there. So it's really nice to see you. And for the speakers, it's always better to see faces.
Yes, the answer is 11 p.m. Just gone 11 p.m.
11 p.m. Okay. Well, welcome to the seminar, Ken. All the way, we've got spanning the whole of the globe, really, from Australia all the way to Brazil and Chile. I can see Rocio there. All very international already. So our topic today. So as parliaments develop more channels for citizens to submit their views, many parliaments want to do that, but then the issue is what to do with those comments. You know, if they bring in all those comments, where do they go? How do you deal with them? And so many parliaments are faced then with a challenge of having to process large volumes of comments, quite often with very short timings, with the political timings are really tight, often with not enough resources to do so. So it's a topic that is very important and very much at the forefront of a lot of parliaments as we speak to. And that's why we've had two seminars on this topic. So the first one was in April, where we heard from the practice in the Scottish Parliament, how they used a couple of platforms and used that to process inputs and link to committee work, but also from New Zealand and again, their perspective in there. And if you want to listen to those seminars, they are available online on the IPU site, but also in the MS Teams of IPEN. In this seminar, we're going to focus on the Congress of Brazil to look at the use of technology there to capture high volumes of citizen input, but actually with two very different methods, two very different approaches. So we'll hear about practice in the Senate of Brazil and practice in the Chamber of Deputies, the lower chamber. So I'll introduce our speakers now, and then I'll explain how the seminar will be structured. So our first speaker, Alisson Bruno. He's the coordinator of the e-citizenship program at the Senate of Brazil and has been leading the public engagement and legislative process in the Senate for 8 years and has really impressive set of tools in there, particularly how it all links together. And hopefully you'll be able to show a little bit of that today, Alisson. And then we've got Rodolfo Vaz, who's from the coordinator of digital solutions for citizens in the Chamber of Deputies, so the lower chamber of the Parliament of the Congress in Brazil, and he's a project manager responsible for transparency and public participation at the Brazilian lower chamber, the Chamber of Deputies. But he also has lots of experience internationally in terms of participation in the Center for Innovation Parliament and other types of initiatives. So we've got two excellent speakers here with lots of experience. They will each speak for about 15 minutes, and then we'll be following it by Q&A. So Alisson will briefly present the e-citizenship program as a whole, and then focus on how they deal with the legislative ideas that they receive and the questions that they have in interactive events. Rodolfo then will briefly present the ePoll system that they use in the chamber and how they're using artificial intelligence to process the many comments that they get from citizens to pass them on to MPs. And hopefully they will also, both of them, indicate to us some of the challenges that they have faced and how they've dealt with that. Hopefully that's all clear. So we'll have time for Q&A at the end of the two presentations. So without further ado, I'll pass on to Alisson. So Alisson, I know you have a presentation, so if you want to share your screen, and I'll shut up for now. We can see your screen now, Alisson.
Okay, then. Now I have it. Hello, everyone. I'm Alisson Bruno, the coordinator for the e-citizenship program in the Senate of Brazil, as Cristina mentioned. And I'd like to start by thanking Cristina and all the people from IPEN and IPU for inviting me to speak about our experience with public engagement. Today, I want to take a different approach that my friend, my colleague, Rodolfo in Brazil, and share with you how we work in an old-fashioned way. Despite living in an increasingly digital world, we believe that some things still require a personal touch. Or at least we must believe it, because we don't have an AI, as they have, to help us yet. We are working on it. And thank you for joining me, and I hope you find our little experience useful. Let me change just my windows here. Okay, so our e-citizenship program was founded in 2012, and since then we have made numerous changes and improvements to our website and procedures. We now have 3 tools. It's almost 4, but I call them 3 tools that citizens can use to participate in different moments of the legislative process. As Cristina said, I will focus on the first 2 of them to explain how we process public inputs and integrate them into the legislative process. But let me just briefly explain the third tool, called public consultation. It's a space where people vote on every ongoing bill, and it's very simple. Just a yes or no button. It's the most popular tool we have, with more than 14 million users. The results of the voting process serve as a kind of thermometer, and this is exactly what some senators said about this tool. So, going to what we are here to do. The first tool is the legislative idea, which allows people to register suggestions for new laws. It was the first tool created on our website back then in 2012, and it's very similar to the UK e-petition system. Anyone 12 years or older can submit their ideas. The age limit was imposed by the General Data Protection Law passed 3 years ago. Before this law, we didn't have any kind of limits. Everyone could submit their ideas, and just because of that, now we need to impose this limitation because of this law. So we have 3 ways to do this. People actually have 3 ways to submit their ideas. The first one, the idea can be submitted by text on our website, and then it goes directly to our human moderation. As you are going to see, we only have human moderation on our system. We don't have any kind of AI to help on our work. And this first way is the most common way that people use. And we also have two more ways to provide more accessibility. And we've been working on it for some years to give more accessibility to people. So deaf people can make a video in sign language and publish it on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, or wherever they want, and send us the link. And we will then ask a sign language interpreter from the Senate, because the Senate have some of them, some employees that work with it, to translate it into text so that our team can moderate its content. And the third way is by phone. People without internet access, or people with some disability, or even with some difficulty to use internet, to use computers or cell phones, they can make a toll-free call to the Senate Ombudsman and express their ideas to the call center agent, who will write their ideas on our website. And the ideas registered by phone as the idea registered by video go through our moderation process as the idea registered by text. All of them pass through our moderation, human moderation. So here, what we verify when we moderate legislative ideas. The most important aspect is to respect unchangeable constitutional clauses. This is the main thing we check, because some ideas are meant to change the Constitution, or even they are not meant to change the Constitution. They don't respect the Constitution because of their contents. So their ideas cannot affect some clauses that are permanent on our Constitution, like the prohibition of death penalty. This is the most common error we see on ideas. So we only accept respectful text and proposition that can be worked on within the Senate's authority. For instance, questions related to a specific city or state are rejected in moderation, because sometimes this is the most common space probably in Brazil, where people can make their questions or ask for some solutions. And sometimes they ask about some problems very specific related to their city, only to their city. And unfortunately, we don't accept those kind of ideas. So after our moderation, we give feedback about every single idea. We read every one of them. And when it's approved, the majority are actually, we send an email with the link to the ideas page and encourage the author to share it, so his proposal can receive support from other people. But when the idea is rejected, I think 10% of them are rejected, such as when it goes against unchangeable constitutional clauses, we also send an email justifying the rejection. We say why and which clause it was against. And sometimes after that, the author makes corrections and try to submit their ideas again. And every idea that is approved on our moderation, in our moderation process, can receive likes from other people. And it's, like I said, it's very similar to the UK petition. Probably all of you know the UK e-petition system. And the ideas that receive 20,000 signatures go to the Committee on Human Rights and Participative Legislation. And at this point, this is a new thing that we have. We contact the author to ask for more details about their suggestion. And with the information received from the author, we prepare a statement to attach to the idea so the senators can have more information to evaluate the proposal. And this is important because the idea is it's a very short text. So the senators sometimes don't know much information about the proposal. And with this statement, we believe that the senators will then be more capable to understand the proposal, and this will be very helpful to the deliberation process. So with the idea and the author's statement in hand, the committee chairman designates a member to prepare a report that will guide the senators to debate the idea and decide whether they turn it into a bill. And recently, we started encouraging the senators to adopt ideas, no matter how many signatures they have. And we have seen kind of a success with this approach, because some senators adopted ideas that they found by themselves, and it is very good when it happens. And some of them adopted ideas after we showed them a list of the best new suggestions. And we've been trying to encourage this kind of approach from the senators for some years, and now we are seeing the fruits of this work. And so far, we have received over 100,000 ideas, which have received 10 million signatures. And the senators have debated almost 100 ideas and turned 42 into bills. And now the second tool, called interactive events. This is a space where people can participate in all public hearings, nomination hearings, and other events that happened in the Senate and in the Congress. It's a very interactive way of engagement, and it has become our culture to have interactive public hearings, even though there is no law requiring them to be interactive. Actually, it will be very awkward to have a public hearing right now without interaction. So it's like the normal thing now to have interaction in public hearings in the Senate. So the process is almost the same as the legislative idea. Everyone can ask questions and make comments online or by phone. We don't have the accessibility to deaf people yet. As you can see, the process by phone is the same as in the legislative idea. The ombudsman agent receives the call and writes the question on our website. So the same way. The public that participate, it's a different, I want to mention that because the public that participates by phone is older and less educated than online users. And I'm talking about the public that participate on public hearings and also that suggests legislative ideas. And we saw that even illiterate people have participated by phone, what wouldn't happen online. It's very interesting to see that this kind of accessibility, it's good to those people that are not meant to, or that are not able to have their voices heard. And we also read every single question that we received, and before they are displayed on our page. So when people send their questions and send their ideas, we read them before they are displayed. So in this case, we check if the question is on topic and respectful. We don't, this is the only thing we check on the interactive events.
Alisson, you've got 2 minutes now.
Okay. And the feedback is also different on interactive events. The question and comments, when approved, are displayed on the events page, but the author doesn't receive an email for each question. We only send an email to those participants after the event is concluded. On the other hand, unfortunately, when the question is rejected, the author does not receive any feedback at all, and the question does not appear on the page. And this is the way that we have to work, because our moderation system in this tool is very simple. There are only two options, thumbs up or thumbs down. And this is our process for handling the questions from the moment when they are submitted on a website to the paper delivered to the senators. So the first stage, the senators send their questions. Then one person from our team moderates them, and most of them are approved in moderation. And then one person from another person from our team, an intern most of the time, selects the best questions. And generally 10 questions and comments are selected, and this intern prepares a doc to print. And after that, this file is reviewed by an official from our team and sent to the committee, where they print the doc and hand it to the senators. And the same person who selects the best questions is responsible to watch the meeting and highlight when they are mentioned. Once the event concludes, the questions that were read are linked to the corresponding moments in the video. And the next step that we are preparing is to highlight when the question is answered as well. So the questions that are read, that were read and answered, will be linked to two separate moments in the video to give more feedback to participants. So, concluding, we have received over 130,000 questions from 46,000 participants, and the senators have read more than 10,000 questions live. And thank you for your attention. I hope I don't spend my whole time.
That was perfect, Alisson. Straight on time. A good example for Rodolfo to follow now. Thank you. There was lots in there, and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions to clarify points, but we can come to that when it comes to the Q&A. So, Rodolfo, do you want to share the screen to share your presentation with us? So, focusing now on the work on ePolls in the chamber. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Christina. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, we can hear very well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. And on behalf of the Brazilian Chamber of Deputies, I'd like to thank Christina, IPEN, and the IPU for inviting us to present our last experience with a public participation tool. I will present our ePoll system, briefly show how it works, the main issues we have faced so far, and how we apply AI to circumvent one of the main issues that we have faced. Finally, I will present our next steps, and hopefully I will be able to manage my excitement with this subject and keep my presentation within the 15-minute lot so we can have a profitable Q&A. Christina, please warn me if I hit the 13-minute.
Oh, don't you worry, I will do.
Okay, thank you very much. To bring as many citizens as possible, we decided to implement an electronic poll application because it's a very simple question with a concise description of the bill, making it easier for the majority to understand it. And this description, in our case, is elaborated by journalists formally hired by the Chamber of Deputies. So being simple to participate makes it prone to viralization, boosting access to our website, which in turn will present more reliable legislative information to the society, which is important considering that we have seen so many, we have seen the rise of fake news around the globe. And finally, we added an option for the citizens to leave comments on the bills, fostering community building on the legislative theme. And this is very important. In this application, an electronic poll is automatically created for each and all the bills that are being processed on the chamber. The users read the explanation, that concise explanation, instead of having to read a long text using legal terms. The users only need to read an explanation using plain Portuguese. Then they cast their votes, they may leave comments, and they can share, they can easily share this poll with family and friends using their social media and apps like WhatsApp and Telegram and so on. On the other side, the MEPs can check their constituencies, how their constituencies have voted on the proposition. They can read the comments and they can leave and submit changes to the bill if they agree with the citizens. If they have another reason, they may explain it on a video that they can post on their social media as well. And we always reinforce to the MEPs that the votes are not statistically representative. And our main goal is to get knowledge out of the comments that the citizens leave. Here you can see some screens of, I guess that you can see my mouse, moving around. So here you can see some screens from a mobile device showing our ePoll. And this is the description, which is one paragraph. Here, the users can see the options to vote. Here they can see the comments left by other citizens, and they can leave their own comments. And they can check if they agree or not with the comments that they read. And finally, they can see the results screen showing how the majority, well, how they have chosen the option that they have chosen, the percentage, the number of votes, so 14,000, and so on. Well, but when we when we deployed this application and users started using it, we saw some issues. First, issues related to age, not only the citizens, but also the MPs. So often older people fear IT. And in our case, this is the number of it's a distribution of our MEPs by age. So what we can see is that I would say that almost half of them are above 50 years old, and the majority are above 40 years old. And many still fear IT, which has decreased after the pandemic, but it is still an issue that we have to face. We also have heard some worries regarding representative democracy. Some MPs fear that this kind of application may lead the country to a direct democracy. And after presenting this application to other parliaments, I've had the same question from other advisors and from other MEPs from all over the world. And the proper answer that we see fit to this fear is that representative democracy is needed to ensure the minorities will be heard. They will have a voice in the parliament, leading representative democracy as a more democratic solution than direct democracy. And this is the main reasoning that we present to those MEPs, and often they agree with us and they are okay with using the comments from the citizens. And another main issue that we had, which brings us to this presentation, is the huge amount of comments that the citizens, it's the huge amount of comments from the citizens that needs to be addressed in a timely manner, as Christina told us before. We have had around 100,000 comments per year, and sometimes above 150, some years above 150,000 comments. Many bills have more than 1,000 or even 10,000 comments. It is impossible for the MPs to read all of them, even with the help of advisors. So the main solution was to somehow apply artificial intelligence to make this information usable. Because of that, we made an agreement with the University of São Paulo in Brazil, and they have developed and they keep on improving a clustering algorithm to group similar ideas into just a few representative comments. This is possible because thousands of comments are not the same as thousands of ideas, but just few perspectives with many different ways to express them. So we often end up with many millions of citizens saying almost the same things in different ways. That's why the clustering algorithm helps us a lot. For example, this screen shows some bills ranging from 8,000 comments to more than 40,000 comments. And the way it works is choosing one bill, any one, and I have chosen one from 2020 here. The MEPs can see the representative, those here, the representative comments out of hundreds of thousands of comments from the citizens. In this case, this bill had more than 40,000 comments, and the algorithm was able to produce 3 main comments, or the 3 main ideas, out of more than 35,000 comments. So many people, many citizens saying the same things in different ways. It would be impossible for the MPs to read all the 547 comments. But now the MP can understand what they are trying to say by just reading a couple of comments, a couple of the main ones that the algorithm was able to produce. And this goes on and on. So all the 45,000 comments were reduced to around 5 groups, range from this group 0 to group number 4. This makes this huge amount of information quickly usable by the MPs. And right now we have selected a group of MEPs to test this solution. But the main idea is to include this functionality in the InfoLeg application, which is another application that MEPs already have in their mobile devices for presence registration, voting, and other legislative actions. We expect this will help us improve representativeness and consolidate our democracy, and decreasing the gap between MPs and citizens. So for our next steps using this application, we are going to implement a functionality that the MEP will be able to tag the clusters that had an impact on their opinions, and the users will be informed as a kind of a feedback that we expect will turn this into a virtual circle and increase citizen participation even more. Although we have more than 10 million users in our database participating in this tool, we have to remember that Brazil has around 120 million voters. So we don't even have 10%. And we really would like to have around from 30 to 40% at least. And as we get to know our users better, we are also going to produce short educational videos to explain the main issues, the main actions, and the main concerns of our citizens, so they have a more knowledge on the legislative process, and will help them participate even more. Trying to keep, as Christina got me, I was fearing that what she could do to me. So I would like to end up right now, and I thank you very much, Christina. And I hope that we can have more time for a profitable Q&A. Back to you, Christina. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rodolfo. It's because I've got 3 sons, you see, so I have to be strict. I know how to be strict. Thank you very much, Alisson and Rodolfo, for 2 really interesting presentations. There was a lot of information in there, a lot of data, and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. We've got plenty of time for questions, which is great. Rodolfo, do you mind just stop sharing your screen? Although it is nice to look at the avenues of the Brazilian Congress with all the ministries buildings over there.
That's what I'm trying to do, but get it. Something went wrong with the Zoom because it only allowed me to share again. I'm trying to see. No. Is my screen still showing?
It is still showing. I suggest
Can you stop it?
It's working now. Brilliant.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Sorry.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Rodolfo. So as I was saying before, if you're able to put your cameras on, that would be really appreciated. If you have questions to ask in particular, but it's always nice to see faces. So we've got about 20 minutes for questions. If you want to ask a question, you can ask your question in the chat, or preferably you could click on raise your hand. So you've got at the bottom of your screen, you should have something called reactions, where you can click on raise your hand, and then I can call you in to ask your question, or I can read your question from the chat, however you prefer. And when I call you in, can you just say briefly where you're from, just to introduce to everyone. So Gillian.
Hi, and thank you. Really interesting presentations. I'm Gillian Baxendine. I'm the head of the Participation and Communities team at the Scottish Parliament. I had a couple of questions for Alisson. One was about in terms of the questions and comments that you get for the interactive hearings, what proportion of them actually get mentioned, if you have any information about that, what the sort of scale of the ones that actually make it through is. And my second question was about sign language submissions. That's something we're looking at the moment to find the best way of receiving sign language submissions. And I wondered whether your approach had been popular, had been successful among sign language speakers. Thank you.
Thank you. Alisson, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Gillian. We have, I think, 8%, 7 or 8% of questions are mentioned live, and most of them are answered, because sometimes the senators, they mention the question, but they don't have time to answer, or they don't give time to the authorities or specialists present on the hearings to answer the question. But most of them are answered. So I think 7 or 8%. And about sign language submission, we launched this possibility in 2018, but unfortunately, just I think 3 ideas were submitted. We've been trying to make it known to those people, deaf people, people who work with deaf people, associations, schools, but it's very difficult, I think, for them to I don't know, to believe that they are able to do this, even though it's very simple to do. We made it possible, but I don't know why they don't use it yet. But we are trying. We are now this year. Now we are making more contact with associations that work and help people with disabilities, and we believe now we are going to see this tool being more used by deaf people.
Thank you, Alisson. Anyone who's got other questions, or shall I just abuse my own position and ask a question? I've got a question from Ken Goghill, so I'll read it, Ken. I presume you want me to read rather than you saying it. So Ken is asking, Ken is an academic based in Australia, and Ken is asking, Brazil is a member of the International Open Government Partnership. Is either chamber involved in Brazil's membership of OGP, and if so, in what way? Rodolfo, do you want to answer this one?
Okay, thank you for the question, Mr. Ken. And yes, the Brazilian Chamber of Deputies has a partnership with Open Government, OGP. Unfortunately, I am not the one who's dealing with this, but so I cannot give you more specific details. But I have a colleague that I know that the chamber is formally enrolled with OGP, and I have a friend, a colleague that goes to the meetings, and I know that he asks me because of the objective that I have to produce some few things regarding our website as well, and there are many actions that we have to take for that. And I would gladly take your contact and pass on to him, or give you send you his contact, whatever you feel is better. Okay.
Ken, do you want to put, if you're happy with that, put your email in the chat, and then Rodolfo can follow it up. If you're not happy to put your email, just email me, and I'll put you in touch with Rodolfo. We've got two questions, one from Andy, one from Eduardo. So Andy, do you want to go first?
Thanks, Christina and Rodolfo and Alison. A question for Rodolfo in particular, maybe also for Alison, about the number of participants. You said that you have currently around 10% of the voting population who are registered in your database. So firstly is how do you promote the ePoll? What do you do to promote it, and if you want to increase the percentage from 10 to 30% of the voting population, how do you plan to do that?
Thank you, Andy. So we have around 10 million users right now, and so far we don't use any means of boosting posts to spread this application. But what we do have is we have a communications department, the Brazilian Chamber of Deputies, and we have Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook accounts, and so on. So they often post about the application, asking citizens to participate. But so far, what we have seen as a successful way to promote is when the media, I would say the regular media or the old media or the conventional media, when a bill hits the media, and we get more than 1 million users coming to our website, to the application, to participate. What we intend to do is to find a way of ethically boosting some polls, if not all of them, but often using the legislative agenda to promote what is going to be discussed or debated on the legislative, on the plenary or committees and so on. And that's the way we think we can get more citizens to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodolfo. Eduardo, and don't forget to say who you are briefly.
Okay. Thank you, Rodolfo, Alisson, and Christina for organizing, and members of IPEN. I'm Eduardo, a professor of political science at Federal University of Minas Gerais, and I'm here in Leeds working with Christina and IPEN group as academic visitor during this year. I would like to ask for Rodolfo if there is some kind of moderation, human moderation in the steps of the artificial intelligence, because we know that we are working with this in my team in Belo Horizonte, and sometimes we have to deal with variation or analysis with more than one researcher, because someone interprets in one way and another one in another way. Then I would like to ask just if there is human participation before the conclusion of the artificial intelligence. Okay, thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Eduardo, and this is a very good question, because one of the things that we have to be sure is that the AI algorithm will be as unbiased as possible. So we do have a sort of moderation, human moderation, but not to all of the polls, because it's a huge amount. We don't have humans to check everything. So what we do is we select some of them, we apply human moderation, and that knowledge is used to better teach our algorithm. So we get this kind of information, we send to the University of São Paulo, and they use those information to better train the algorithm. That's what we do nowadays.
Thank you. And Lumina, do you want to come in? Lumina Mentari?
Yes, thank you, Christina. My name is Lumina. I'm from the Indonesian Parliament. I think I know Rodolfo from Legistec a year ago. So my question is about closing the feedback loops. Because a lot of our comments and pollings, how do you measure and evaluate your platform as a whole? Is it by the increasing numbers of participation, or because in Indonesia sometimes the lack of participation might be because the issue is not problematic enough. So how do you measure the quality of services and the quality of engagement in your platform? And also, how do you close the feedback loops on their comments and inputs and resolving the issues that come from the public?
Can I sneak in a question, because we're running out of time, to Alisson actually, about your the call center system that you have? I'm really interested in that. Would like to know a little bit more about who is the team that does that. Is it a central team in Parliament and you liaise with them? So say someone rings in the phone number on the Senate and say, I'll have a legislative idea, and then they contact you, or do they contact you directly? So how does that work? And I think this probably will be the last two questions. And Alisson, if you've got any comments on the feedback, closing the feedback loop, because I know you do a lot on that, that would be great too. But let's go to Rodolfo now to answer Lumina's question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lumina, for the question. And first, the way we measure is we don't care much about, not that we don't care much about, but we have to take into consideration that the participation will be according to the legislative agenda. So we don't if we don't have many interesting, I would say interesting bills, people were not going to participate. And when we have some important bills, some important issues like billing, taxes and so on, we have higher percentage of participation. So the way we measure is the amount of comments that our algorithm sees related to the bill that the citizens are voting. So this is one important measure that we have. I would say that it's the main measure. But we also, of course, we also want more people participating. So the number of users that we have is also an important indicator. And around 2 years ago, it took us around 3 years to reach 6 million users and 1.5 years to reach 10 million users. And as for the feedback loop, what we are applying now, what we are developed now, is a way for the MPs, when they read the comments, they will say, okay, this kind of comment is important to me. This is going to make me change my position on the bill. Or this is important to me. I'm not going to change it, but I want to explain to the user that this is important to me. So the MEPs will be able to tag those comments and change their position or submit a video. And when they tag it, we send a message to the user explaining him what the MEP did with the link to the video or with the change that MEP has submitted. I will try to keep it brief, Christina. If you think that I should say anything more, please let me know. Thanks.
I think that was quite clear, but Lumina, if you've got another question about that, maybe put in the chat. And Alisson?
Okay, thanks. About the phone call center. This is the main phone call center, I think the only one that the Senate has. So it's a partnership that we made. They receive the calls. They have a big team to work with it, and they have an account on the citizenship portal. They have an account there, so they use their own account to submit the ideas that they received by phone, to submit the questions that they received, and they put the name of the citizen inside the space of the idea of the comments. So you see that that account is from the ombudsman, the Senate's ombudsman, but inside the text you see the Senate, the citizen's name. So this was the easiest way we found. It was free. We didn't have to spend nothing in the Senate, spend anything in the Senate. So it was very easy to do. About the feedback loop, we measure the participation and the success of participation on how many ideas are turned into bills and how many ideas are discussed by the senators in the committee on human rights and participative legislation, how many ideas are adopted by senators. This is the way that we found to measure it, and it's simple to measure this kind of effectiveness. And on interactive events, we measure how many questions are mentioned, and now we are going to measure how many questions are answered live. And we only do this live. We don't have any way to answer the questions after the event concludes. So the only way that we do is live, and this is how we measure. And we have just 7 or 8% of questions mentioned live, because we have probably an average of 50, 60, 70 questions per event, and it's a lot of questions to be read. So this is why just few questions are read live. And let me just briefly answer Andy. He asked about the users and how we advertise it. I think we have now 19 million users on our base. And as Rodolfo, we don't have any kind, just the Senate's media system that works with it, like on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. They advertise sometimes to invite people to participate, not in any specific public consultation or to support any idea, but generally to participate, to give ideas or to vote on public consultation in general. But they advertise interactive events, all of them. This is a partnership we made with them. So they are advertising all interactive events to invite people to participate.
Thank you very much, Alisson. There's a couple questions on the chat, which I'm a bit worried of if we read it. There's one that is very quick for Rodolfo on the ePoll account, for people who don't speak other languages, for people who only speak other languages, not Portuguese. Do you have any way of dealing with that? And then the last question, if you could answer in the chat, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Christina. Well, in Brazil, every citizen is taught Portuguese since kindergarten, and everyone, almost, I would say almost 100% of the people are able to speak Portuguese. Nonetheless, we do support sign language, and unfortunately, there is no support for indigenous people. Well, I would say in any website of the government. That may change in the future, but I don't think there is any initiative right now. Thank you.
So at the moment is mainly Portuguese. Lumina's question in the chat is a really, really important question, but I think we're going to run out of time. It's basically about whether your platforms are incorporated into the code of conduct and rules of procedure. If you could both answer that in the chat, that would be really, really appreciated. while I finish off the seminar, if that's okay, because they're really important questions about the integration of these tools to the rules of the Parliament. So we're coming to the end. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, for attending the seminar. Before I do more thank yous, just to announce our next seminar will be taking place on the 27th of June at 9 o'clock UK time. And it'll be an hour and a half seminar, actually, and it will be about citizens' assemblies. And we're going to look at 2 case studies, one in Germany and one in Australia. And they're really interesting case studies because they're live case studies. This is happening now, and we're going to see like the first findings of these experiments, and they are citizen assemblies around MPs rather than parliaments, so slightly different to other models that we know about. So do join us on the 27th of June, and Fiona's just put the link to that seminar in the chat if you want to register. Like this one, it will be a public engagement hub seminar, so it'll be on Zoom and you have to register for it. For anyone who wants more information on the Public Engagement Hub, again, Fiona or Andy will put the link in the chat so you can take a look at that. And for more information on the International Parliament Engagement Network, IPEN, and how to join us, again, the link will appear magically in the chat in a few minutes. So, so for IPEN, we have an MS Teams platform associated to it, so there's a bit more discussion space for discussion. And for instance, after this seminar, we can develop a discussion on the seminar in that platform, which is an MS Teams platform of IPEN. So if you're not part of that, I would encourage you to be. If you are part of it, then I encourage you to go to MS Teams, to the seminar slot, and ask questions. So thank you very much for everyone for attending. Thank you very much to the interpreters. Interpreters do a fantastic job following out very quick English speaking with lots of different accents. So thank you. And thank you, obviously, to Alisson and Rodolfo, who gave us just a little bit insight of what they do. They do far more, and I'm sure they'll come back again to show us more. And I'm sure they'll be very happy to be contacted on MS Teams or elsewhere for any other questions, because they love their job and they love an opportunity to talk about it. But for now, I wish you all a lovely day, a lovely evening, a lovely morning, wherever you are.